I would like to invite other guests who are here with us today, Astronaut and Artist Nicole Stott, Bruce Duncan, to please join me up front. Some of you will have seen Nicole's work, which is at the first table as you first walk in. Nicole, the view from the cloud, which was really the astronaut's view from space that inspired this sense of interconnectedness and which has certainly been inspiration for this ongoing project. Could you share, I know you have a presentation, but just a word about how these threads interconnected in your life?
Well, I think, first of all, I'll lead in with just saying thank you for including me here today, and to all of you that are, I think, working very deliberately to, change our perspective a little bit, to redirect the way we do things here on Earth. This idea of sustainable development goals, the sustainable development of our planet, which then results in the sustainable development and life for us. Very, very important. I also, this idea of connectivity, I think it's at the core of all of this, and I think whether it's down on the floor with the honeybee or in the classrooms in a new way, there's a real power that comes from connection. And everything I think that's been spoken to today, there's some point in it, whether it's from a financial aspect and how we redirect the way we look at our investments and how our money is made, to providing clean drinking water somewhere, to the way we look at rebels in the Congo. I mean, it's about connection, and there's a real power there. And I think, honestly, that's at the base of all of this. A lot of times there's a question of what it was like to be in space. I think in all of this, going back to that connection, a lot of times we have to take ourselves out of our comfort zone. We have to separate ourselves to really become more connected to what's maybe on a daily basis all around us. And I can tell you, going to space does that for you. When we talk about a view from the cloud, maybe a view from above the clouds, and back at our home, this picture to me is the single one that reminds me of what it was like to be in space. I think you look at the silhouette of this space shuttle, it looks very disconnected in the grand scheme of things maybe, but I can tell you I feel totally connected when I look at it. I feel a connection to the people I know I was on board that space shuttle with. We were about to come home. This was after a little over 3 months in space. I feel a connection to the person, one of my crewmates, Jeff Williams, who was still on the space station taking this picture of us about to go home. And I certainly feel a connection to the planet that we're circling around at 5 miles a second, 17,500 miles an hour. And the way I'm reminded of that, even though this is a still photo, is that this is a picture of one of the very beautiful sunrises or sunsets that we experience 16 times a day because we're going around the Earth every 90 minutes. So about every 45 minutes you get one of these. And just a very vivid memory of what it was like to be in space. The shuttle, the station, both of these vehicles, I think when you look at them in these pictures, they're just beautiful pictures. There's a simplicity in that. But I can tell you, every aspect, every corner of every one of these vehicles, there is a complexity there as well. And it's a complexity that I think defines what we can do as human beings. When human beings decide to come together with a very positive mission, we can do really incredible things. And our space shuttle, the space station are certainly examples of that. And this space station, as you approach it out of nowhere, chasing it down for a day and a half in space, it comes as a dot out of nowhere. It becomes about perspective too. This idea that we're moving towards something that looks like nothing at first and becomes absolutely the most overwhelming, stunning thing that I had ever seen before. And the fact that in that space station, there were 6 people waiting for us. When you talk about perspective and our planet, I wanted to see something that was familiar to me when I first got to space, and that was Florida. I grew up in Florida. Florida was I considered to be home. I wanted to see my space station and how it creates power for me through these beautiful solar arrays and those sunrises and sunsets that are happening, and the opportunity to look at that in a different way. The fact that as human beings, we can go into very different environments and adapt very quickly to watching your crewmate crawl along the bottom of the station and have to figure that out, to a geography lesson, talk about a connection. I was never very good at geography, but to get to know your planet in a way that allows you to look out the window and just know where you're flying over, or to be hunting things down like these pyramids that are out there, just to get to know the planet that way was a very special experience. But then ultimately, I think it evolved to looking for things that were familiar, and then looking for things that were just beautiful and surprising to you out the window. There's the wave. It looked like somebody just painted a wave on the ocean. That was my inspiration for what I painted in space, and for what I do now here with art. Pink flower in the middle of Australia, a salt lake, and then little naturally shaped island in the middle of the Red Sea. And I look at that picture, and to me it says God must have a really wonderful sense of humor. And that we are human beings, we are curious, we are meant to work together, and we are meant to discover the very special things about our planet that, to me, became home. I started looking out that window for Florida as my home, but very quickly that evolves to Earth being our home. And that's a pretty impressive thing to have happen. And there is not a day goes by now where that is not in the back of my mind in some way. And I'm very thankful that I don't think you have to go to space. A number of our colleagues, a couple of them here, will tell you that you don't have to go to space to have that sense. And I think my sense is that all of you in this room understand that as well. This is just a picture of what I'm doing now. I had the opportunity to paint in space. I believe art is the ultimate universal communicator. And we have been using art in science forever to communicate complex ideas. Our brains, I think, wrap around a picture of something perhaps much better than they do the zeros and ones necessarily. And I feel it's my responsibility to share the experience I had in space, both from the standpoint of what we're doing in space, because I think a lot of people don't understand that, and that ultimately it's about improving life here on Earth, and also about flipping it around to a lesson, if nothing else, in Earth appreciation. And Earth appreciation equals Earthling appreciation. I will argue that because everything we're doing to protect our planet is ultimately about protecting us. And that becomes very important, I think, whether you look at each other as individuals or as the collective around the world, which, by the way, is not that far. The other side of the world is not that far. But in the end, it's about the people. It's about who we're sharing this experience with today in this room, and it's about the people that we do anything with in our lives, and again, ultimately about how we save this planet to save ourselves.
You spoke about what it means to be human, and now we have some ones with us who are taking the human experience to a different level. With that, I'd like to ask Bruce Duncan of the Terrorism Foundation and Bina 48, whom he will introduce to take the floor.